He was a billionaire with everything. But when his 6-year-old niece asked, if we weren't rich, would people still like us? He couldn't answer, and so he gave up his name, his suits, and his luxury life, and became homeless, not for attention, for the truth. Then he met a woman who loved him when he had nothing. But when she discovered who he really was, everything almost fell apart. This isn't a story about money, it's about who stays when it's gone. Pull up a seat. Welcome to Afro-Moral Tales, where morals shake hands with mischief and every tale bites, gently. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let's fill this circle with voices from around the world. Wait, before we begin, if you love stories with heart, wisdom, and a little mischief, hit subscribe and join the circle. That it's free, and you belong here now. Let's begin. Ethan Cole lived on the top floor of a glass tower in Manhattan. The apartment had everything. Wide windows, clean white walls, art chosen by designers, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. At night, the city lights filled the space like a private show. He built his company from nothing. Now it operates in 12 countries. His name appeared in business magazines. Investors trusted him. Employees admired him. Strangers wanted photos with him. But when the door closed behind him each evening, the silence felt heavy. Across the living room, a small pair of pink shoes sat near the couch. They belonged to Lily. Lily was 6 years old. She had large, thoughtful eyes and a habit of watching people closely before she spoke. 3 years ago, her mother, Ethan's older sister, died in a car accident. Since then, Lily had lived with him. He was not just a CEO, he was a guardian, a protector, the only family she had left. That night, Lily sat on the floor drawing with colored pencils. Ethan loosened his tie and sat beside her. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "Our family," she said. He looked at the page. It was simple, a tall figure holding a small hand. But there were no buildings, no cars, no symbols of wealth, just two people. "Uncle Ethan," she said softly, still coloring, "if we were not rich, would people still want to be around us?" The question stopped him. "Why do you ask that?" he said carefully. She shrugged. "At school, some kids only play with me when their parents see you on TV." He felt something tighten in his chest. "Do they treat you differently?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "It's like they like the idea of us. The idea of us." He stood and walked toward the window. The skyline stretched endlessly in front of him. Everything he built was out there. But Lily's question felt bigger than the city. He thought about the women he had dated, the way their eyes changed when they learned his net worth, the way conversations always returned to vacations, brands, connections. He had convinced himself it did not matter. But now he wondered what Lily was learning just by watching him live. If one day the money disappeared, who would stay? If Lily ever stood alone without protection, would someone still choose her? He turned back and looked at her small figure on the floor. "I'm glad it's just us," she said quietly. He walked back and sat beside her. "It will always be just us," he replied. But inside, something had shifted. He needed to know the truth. Not about business, not about success, about people, and about love without advantage. That night, long after Lily fell asleep, Ethan stood alone in the empty penthouse. For the first time, all the space around him felt meaningless, and an idea began to form. Ethan did not sleep. He stayed by the window until the sky slowly turned gray. The city never really rested. Cars moved. Lights blinked. Somewhere below, people were already starting their day. Behind him, the penthouse felt too large. Lily's question replayed in his mind. If we were not rich, would people still want to be around us? It was not just about children at school. It was about the world she would grow up in, the world he had helped build. At 6 in the morning, he walked into his home office and called Daniel. Daniel had worked with Ethan since the early startup days. He was loyal, practical, careful. Daniel arrived within the hour. "You look like you haven't slept," Daniel said. "I haven't," Ethan replied. Daniel waited. He knew that tone. "I'm going to disappear for a few weeks," Ethan said calmly. Daniel blinked. "Disappear how?" "I'm stepping out of my world. No security near me. No press. No public appearances." "That's not possible," Daniel said. "You have board meetings. Investors. Reschedule what you can. Handle the rest." Daniel crossed his arms. "What is this about?" Ethan paused. My niece asked me if people would like her if we weren't rich. Daniel said nothing. I don't know the answer, Ethan continued. And that bothers me. So what are you planning to do? Ethan leaned back in his chair. I'm going to live without my name. Daniel stared at him. I'll dress like someone with nothing. I'll sit where people usually look away. I want to see how the world treats a person who has no status. Daniel shook his head slowly. That's dangerous. I won't be reckless, Ethan replied. You'll keep quiet security at a distance. No one steps in unless necessary. And Lily? Daniel asked. She'll think I'm working extended hours. She's used to that. Daniel studied him carefully. This isn't only about her, is it? Ethan's voice lowered. No, it's about love too. Daniel understood. The failed relationships. The constant doubt. The feeling of being valued for access instead of character. You really think this will give you answers? Daniel asked. I think it will give me perspective. Silence filled the room. Finally, Daniel sighed. If we do this, we do it properly, he said. New clothes. No credit cards. Burner phone for emergencies. We create a schedule so you're not predictable. Ethan nodded. And you stay within the city, Daniel added firmly. Agreed. By midday, the plan was in motion. Daniel returned with worn jeans, an old jacket, scuffed shoes. Ethan changed in the guest bedroom. When he stepped back into the living room, Daniel barely recognized him. The confident billionaire was gone. In his place stood a tired man most people would walk past. Ethan caught his reflection in the glass wall. No suit, no watch, no power, just a man. From down the hallway, Lily's voice called softly. Uncle Ethan. He froze for a moment. Then he walked toward her room. This was no longer just an idea. It was real, and it had already begun. Ethan stood outside Lily's bedroom door for a moment before entering. She was sitting on her bed, holding her stuffed rabbit. You're leaving early? She asked. Work trip, he said gently. Just for a while. She studied him closely, like she always did when something felt different. You look tired, she said. I'll be okay. She slid off the bed and hugged him tightly. Don't forget to come back, she whispered. Never, he replied. He walked out of the penthouse with a small backpack and no driver. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened to the lobby, no one greeted him. No one held the door. The security guard glanced at him and looked away. The disguise was already working. He stepped on the sidewalk and blended into the flow of the city. By noon, Ethan chose a spot near a busy subway entrance in Brooklyn. Not too crowded, not too quiet. He sat on the pavement and placed a paper cup in front of him. For the first time in years, he had nowhere specific to be. People passed in waves. Some walked around him without making eye contact. A few dropped coins without slowing down. One man muttered, "Get a job." Ethan kept his head lowered. He listened more than he looked. He noticed how fast people moved, how carefully they avoided touching him, how discomfort showed in small gestures, tighter grips on bags, shorter glances, quick steps. He was not dangerous. He was simply unwanted. Hours passed. His back began to ache. The concrete felt harder than he expected. A group of teenagers walked by. One laughed. Bro, imagine ending up like that. They didn't lower their voices. Ethan swallowed his reaction. He thought about Lily again. If she ever lost everything, would the world treat her like this? Would strangers decide her worth in a second? Late afternoon came. A woman stopped briefly. She didn't give money. She looked at him directly. Are you okay? She asked. The question surprised him. Yes, he said quietly. She nodded and continued walking. It was a small moment, but it felt different. As the evening crowd thickened, the city grew louder. He realized something important. Wealth had always acted like a shield. It shaped how people approached him. It created space around him. Now that the shield was gone, and in its place was distance. He was no longer Ethan Cole, CEO. He was just another man on the ground. Invisible, and strangely, painfully human. He pulled his jacket closer and adjusted his position against the wall. This was only the first day, and already the world looked very different from down here. By early evening, Ethan's legs felt stiff. The rush near the subway entrance had slowed. Office workers had gone home. The energy of the street shifted into something quieter but still restless. He looked into his paper cup. A few coins. Not much. Enough to understand something. Money given without eye contact feels different. It does not carry dignity. He adjusted his jacket and lowered his head again. That was when a small pair of sneakers stopped in front of him. Ethan did not look up immediately. Children sometimes stared, sometimes pointed. He waited for laughter. Instead, he heard a zipper open. He slowly lifted his eyes. A boy stood there, maybe 8 years old. Dark hair, backpack hanging off one shoulder. No adult nearby. The boy pulled out a sandwich wrapped in foil. He hesitated for a second. Then he broke in half. "You can have this," the boy said. Ethan blinked. "I'm okay," Ethan replied automatically. The boy frowned slightly. "You look hungry." There was no pity in his voice. No performance. Just observation. Ethan took the sandwich. "Thank you," he said quietly. The boy nodded, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "My mom says if you have extra, you share." "That's a good rule," Ethan replied. The boy shrugged. "It's just fair." He sat beside Ethan for a moment, unbothered by the concrete. "What's your name?" the boy asked. "Ethan." "I'm Sam." They ate in silence for a few seconds. "Why are you sitting here?" Sam asked. Ethan thought carefully. "I'm trying to understand something." Sam accepted that answer without pressing further. "My bus is coming," he said suddenly, standing up. He adjusted his backpack and looked down at Ethan again. "Don't forget to eat the rest," he said. Then he ran toward the corner where a school bus had just stopped. Ethan watched him climb aboard. Through the window, Sam waved. Ethan lifted his hand in return. When the bus drove away, the street felt different. The sandwich's hands felt heavier than it should. A child with limited resources had shared without hesitation. No calculation, no advantage, just kindness. Ethan thought of Lily again. Children did not measure worth by wealth. They measured need. He looked down at the other half of the sandwich. In boardrooms, generosity was often strategic. Out here, it was simple. He took another bite slowly. For the first time since sitting down that day, he did not feel invisible. He felt seen, and that mattered more than the coins in his cup. Ethan stayed seated long after Sam's bus disappeared. The sandwich was finished, but the feeling stayed. For the first time that day, he did not feel like a problem people needed to avoid. He felt human. The streetlights flicked on one by one. Evening crowds changed again. Fewer office workers. More restless energy. He was about to gather his cup when 3 young men stopped in front of him. They were loud, confident, watching each other more than him. One of them nudged the paper cup with his shoe. Coins spilled onto the pavement. "Look at this," one of them said. "Easy money." Ethan stayed still. Another bent down and started picking up the coins. "Hey," Ethan said quietly. "That's mine." The tallest one stepped closer. "Yours," he said with a small laugh. "You earned it." There was no anger in their faces, just amusement. That made it worse. Ethan knew he could overpower at least one of them. Years of disciplined training had kept him in shape. But that was not the role he had chosen. He stayed seated. The tallest one grabbed Ethan's jacket and pulled him slightly forward. "Say thank you," he said. Before Ethan could respond, a firm voice cut through the noise. "Step away from him." The 3 men turned. A police officer stood a few feet away. Tall, composed, focused. Officer Marcus Reed. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. But his presence changed the air. "Drop it," Marcus said calmly. The young man holding the coins hesitated. Marcus took one step forward. "I won't repeat myself." The coins fell back to the ground. The 3 men muttered something under their breath and walked off quickly, blending into the sidewalk. Marcus waited until they were gone. Then he looked down at Ethan. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," Ethan replied. Marcus crouched briefly and helped gather the scattered coins. He placed them back in the cup. "You shouldn't sit here this late," Marcus said. "People look for easy targets." Ethan studied him. There was no pity in his voice. No disgust. Just concern. "I understand," Ethan said. Marcus stood up. "This city can be harsh," he added. "Be smart." He turned to leave. "Officer," Ethan called softly. Marcus glanced back. "Thank you." Marcus gave a short nod. "That's my job." He walked away, steady and controlled, disappearing into the flow of the street. Ethan looked at the cup again. The coins felt different now, not because of their value, but because someone had stepped in when it mattered. Wealth had always protected him before. Tonight, Protection came from character. And for the first time since sitting on the pavement, Ethan understood something clearly. Strength without ego is rare. And he had just seen it up close. Ethan remained seated for a few minutes after Officer Marcus disappeared into the crowd. The street felt different now. Not safer, but clearer. There were people who took advantage, and people who stepped in. He slowly stood up and stretched his stiff legs. The concrete had pressed into his bones. His shoulders ached. His pride had already been tested. He picked up his cup and walked without direction. A few blocks away, the noise softened slightly. The subway entrance was behind him. The traffic less aggressive. The air carried a different smell. Food. Simple, warm, direct. He followed it until he saw a small corner stand under a metal awning. A folding table. A portable stove. Containers neatly arranged. No branding. No signboard. Just handwritten prices taped to the front. Behind the table stood a young woman. Mid-20s. Dark hair pulled back. Sleeves rolled to her elbows. Focused hands. No unnecessary movement. She worked with rhythm. Taking orders. Packing containers. Handing change. No performance. No flirtation. No rush beyond what was needed. Ethan stood at a distance first. He did not want to approach too quickly. When the line shortened, she noticed him. Noticed, not avoided. Her eyes paused on him for one extra second. Not in judgment. In observation. He looked away instinctively. She finished serving the last customer and wiped her hands on a cloth. "You've been standing there a while," she said. Her voice was calm. Neutral. Ethan stepped closer. "I'm fine," he replied automatically. She studied him for a moment. "You don't look fine." There was no accusation in it. Just fact. He said nothing. Without another word, she reached for a container, scooped rice and vegetables into it, added a small piece of chicken, and closed the lid. She placed it gently on the edge of the table. "Eat," she said. "I don't have," he started. "It's not about that." Silence passed between them. He picked up the container slowly. "Thank you," he said. She nodded once. "Sit over there," she said, pointing to a small plastic chair beside the stand. Not on the ground. It wasn't a command. It was a consideration. He sat. The food was warm. Real. Not charity packaged for effect. She went back to arranging her stand as if nothing unusual had happened. No one clapped. No one filmed it. A man walked by and glanced at Ethan sitting on the chair. The woman noticed. "He's eating," she said firmly. "Move along." The man looked away and continued walking. Ethan lowered his eyes. For the second time since coming to the street, someone had stepped in without needing status to justify it. When he finished eating, he stood and approached the table. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She hesitated briefly. "Maya." He nodded. "I'm Ethan." She did not react to the name. "Just another man." "Try not to stay too late out here," she said. "People aren't always kind." He understood that more than she knew. As he walked away, one thought stayed with him. If Lily ever stood alone somewhere in this world, he hoped someone like Maya would see her. Ethan did not go far that night. He stayed across the street, leaning against a closed storefront, watching the quiet rhythm of Maya's stand. Not in a suspicious way, in a thoughtful way. She worked alone, counted change carefully, cleaned as she went, closed only when everything was packed properly. No shortcuts, no complaints. When she finally turned off the small lamp above the table, she lifted the containers with steady hands and walked toward the side street. Ethan left in the opposite direction. The next morning, he returned. Not to the subway entrance, to the food stand. Maya was already there, setting up. Hair tied back again. Focused. She looked up briefly when she saw him. "You're early," she said. "So are you." She gave a small half-smile. He stood nearby, unsure whether to approach. After a few minutes, she handed him a bottle of water. "Drink," she said. "You looked dehydrated yesterday." He accepted it quietly. "Thank you." She shrugged. Basic human care. The words stayed with him. Around midday, business picked up. Office workers lined up. Delivery drivers stopped quickly. Conversations overlapped. Ethan sat on the plastic chair again, out of the main path. A man in a suit stepped aside while waiting for his order. His eyes landed on Ethan. He frowned. "Why do you let him sit here?" the man asked Maya. "It's bad for business." Maya didn't look up immediately. She finished sealing a container and handed it to another customer. Then she faced the man calmly. "He's not hurting anyone," she said. "It doesn't look professional." Maya met his eyes. "He's still a person." The line grew quieter for a second. The man scoffed lightly. "You're too soft. Or maybe you're too comfortable," she replied. No anger, just clarity. The man grabbed his food and left. Business continued. No drama. Ethan felt something shift inside him again. No one had defended him like that before. Not without knowing who he was. Not without something to gain. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't trying to prove a point to the crowd. She simply believed what she said. After the rush slowed, he stood and approached her. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Yes, I did," she replied, wiping down the table. "Why?" She looked at him directly. "Because if I let people talk like that, I'm agreeing with them." He held her gaze. "Most people would ignore it." "I'm not most people." Silence passed between them, but it wasn't awkward. It felt steady. He nodded slowly. Respect. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was shown in small decisions. In who you choose to defend when there's nothing to gain. And as Ethan walked away again that afternoon, he realized something important. Power commands attention, but respect is chosen. And Maya had just chosen him. Ethan walked away from the food stand with Maya's words still in his mind. "I'm not most people." He found himself returning again the next day. Not because he needed food. Not because he had nowhere else to go. Because something about that corner felt honest. By late afternoon, the line at Maya's stand had thinned. She moved more slowly now, checking containers, counting cash, stacking lids. Ethan stayed nearby, sitting on the plastic chair she had offered him. The street felt calm. Until it wasn't. Two men approached from the side alley. Their movements were too casual, too deliberate. One leaned on the edge of the table. "You closing soon?" he asked Maya. "Yes," she replied without looking up. "You shouldn't be out here alone." "I'm not alone," she said calmly. The second man laughed. Ethan felt his body tense. The first man reached toward one of the containers. Not to buy, to touch. Maya moved it away. "I said I'm closing." The man's smile faded slightly. "Relax," he said. "We're just talking." Ethan stood up slowly. "Leave her alone," he said quietly. Both men turned toward him. "Look at this," one muttered. "Hero." Before Ethan could step closer, a firm voice cut through the space. "That's enough." Officer Marcus Reed walked toward them with steady steps. The two men stiffened immediately. Marcus didn't rush. He didn't shout, but he didn't hesitate either. "You want to explain what's happening?" he asked. "No problem, officer," one of them said quickly. "We're leaving." "Good choice." They walked away without looking back. Marcus watched until they disappeared around the corner. Then he turned to Maya. "You shouldn't close this late," he said. "I know," she replied. "It was busy." His tone softened slightly. "Call me next time." Maya nodded. Ethan stood a few feet away, silent. Marcus finally looked at him. His expression was neutral. Assessing. "You again," Marcus said. Ethan held his gaze. "Yes." Marcus glanced at the plastic chair, the water bottle, the space Ethan occupied. "You spending a lot of time here," he observed. "I don't cause trouble," Ethan replied. "That's not what I asked." There was no hostility in Marcus's voice, just caution. Maya stepped in. "He's fine," she said. Marcus looked at her carefully. "You know him?" "His name is Ethan," she replied. Marcus studied him again. Something protective moved behind his eyes. "Stay out of situations you can't handle," Marcus said to Ethan. "I will." Marcus nodded once. Then he turned back to Maya. "I'll walk you home." She didn't argue. As they began packing up together, Ethan understood. This wasn't just a police officer protecting a citizen. This was a brother. The way Marcus positioned himself slightly in front of her. The way his eyes scanned the street. It felt familiar. Ethan thought of Lily. He would stand exactly the same way. When Maya and Marcus walked away side by side, Ethan remained where he was. For the first time, he realized something new. Winning Maya's trust was one thing. Earning her brother's was something else entirely. Ethan watched Maya and Marcus disappear at the end of the street. The way Marcus walked slightly ahead. The way Maya didn't argue. Protection without control. It stayed with him. He could have stopped coming after that night. He had already seen enough to understand the world was different without money. He had felt invisibility, disrespect, kindness, danger. The experiment could have ended there, but it didn't. The next morning, he returned again. Not because he needed answers now, because he needed something else. Maya was already setting up. When she saw him, she didn't look surprised anymore. "You're consistent," she said. "I don't have much else to do," he replied. She handed him a napkin and pointed to the plastic chair without speaking. It had become routine. He sat. After the morning rush, she finally had a few minutes of quiet. She leaned against the table, stretching her wrists. "You don't talk much," she said. "You do enough for both of us," he replied. A small smile appeared, then faded. "I wasn't always here," she said suddenly. He looked at her. "I studied business for a year," she continued. "Then money ran out. My parents passed when I was younger. My brother took care of me. I didn't want him doing everything alone." She said simply, "No drama, no self-pity. I'll go back one day," she added. "This is temporary." Ethan listened carefully. There was ambition in her voice, but not desperation. "What would you do?" he asked. "Build something stable. Maybe open multiple locations. Maybe something bigger. I don't want charity. I want structure." Structure. He respected that word. He almost told her he owned companies that could change her life in a second. But that would destroy the point. This wasn't about rescue. It was about character. "You ever think about leaving the city?" he asked. She shook her head. "This city is hard, but it's honest. It shows you who you are." He absorbed that. Then she looked at him more closely. "What about you?" she asked. "You don't seem lost." He hesitated. "I'm figuring things out," he said carefully. She studied his face. "You don't feel like someone who gave up." The word struck him. He hadn't realized she noticed that. He thought of Lily again. He wasn't just here for love. He was here to understand the world she would inherit, to see what strength looked like without protection. And every time Maya stood her ground, with customers, with strangers, with her own limits, he saw something Lily could learn from. That was why he stayed. Not for comfort, not for curiosity, but because in this small corner of the city, he had found something rare. Dignity without power. Ambition without greed. Kindness without weakness. And he wasn't ready to walk away from that yet. Ethan left the stand that afternoon with Maya's words still in his head. This city is hard, but it's honest. He walked slowly, not ready to return to the penthouse. Not ready to leave this version of himself. His burner phone vibrated in his pocket. Only one person had that number. Daniel. Ethan stepped into a quiet corner and answered. "It's urgent," Daniel said immediately. "There's a situation with the board. It can't wait." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. "What happened?" An investor pulled out. "Media is asking questions. They need you in person." He looked back toward the street where Maya's stand was still visible in the distance. "I'll come," he said. "I'm sending the car," Daniel replied. "No," Ethan said quickly. "Not near here. It's already on the way." The call ended. Ethan felt a tight pressure in his chest. Timing had never betrayed him before. 5 minutes later, a sleek black sedan turned onto the street. Polished, silent, out of place. It slowed near the curb. People noticed immediately. Maya looked up from behind the table. The driver stepped out. "Daniel." He walked directly toward Ethan. "Sir," Daniel said quietly. The word hung in the air. Too formal. Too exposed. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not here," he muttered. Daniel glanced around. Too late. Maya was watching. Not confused at first. Just observant. Daniel opened the back door of the car. The interior lights revealed leather seats. Screens. Comfort. Ethan hesitated for half a second. Then he stepped forward and got in. The door closed. The car pulled away smoothly. Inside, silence filled the space. Daniel looked at him through the mirror. "She saw," Daniel said carefully. "I know." Ethan stared out the window. On the sidewalk, he caught one last glimpse of Maya. She stood still behind her stand. Not angry. Not shocked. Just thinking. The car turned the corner. The city outside returned to familiar territory. Glass buildings. Clean sidewalks. Structured order. Daniel spoke again. "You knew this would get complicated." "I didn't expect it like that," Ethan replied. "You can't move between worlds without consequences." Ethan leaned back. The leather seat felt foreign now. Comfortable, but distant. He imagined Maya replaying the scene. The homeless man stepping into a luxury car. The driver calling him sir. Trust is fragile. He knew that. And for the first time since starting this journey, he felt something he hadn't planned for. Fear, not of exposure, but of losing the one person who had treated him like he had nothing and still mattered. As the car pulled into the underground garage of his tower, Ethan understood something clearly. The experiment had crossed into something real, and the truth would not stay hidden much longer. If this story made you think, smile, or remember something important, then you belong in this circle. Subscribe to Afromoral Tales and help us keep these stories alive. It's free, but it means everything. And before you go, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let's see how far this circle reaches. Until the next tale, stay curious.